Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. We did 3 episodes recently where I got a chance to take a look at some of your photography, offer some tips and tricks to do some tweaks and stuff in Lightroom and Photoshop. And I wanted to do one specifically on Lightroom. So the other one's called Photography 101. This one's called Lightroom 101. So this will kind of be the first episode in that series where I kind of look at my photos. So looked at your photos. That's going to be in the other series, the Photography 101. This one is looking at my photos. Completely, strictly editing. Obviously, I'll give you some tips and tricks and stuff on photography as well, but this is mostly about Lightroom. And it's maybe not specifically Lightroom, but about how to approach editing your photo, whether it's whatever program you use. I've only ever used Lightroom basically for the past 10 years, so I'm not even sure what other programs are available. I think there's like paint.net or something like that. But anyway, let's jump into this. I've got 6 photographs of mine, just random photographs from my archive. I just grabbed them, and I'll tell you a little bit about the photograph, where I was, and then my approach to how I edit. So, all right, let's get into it. All right, so this first photograph was taken in 2017 during my trip to Vegas, and then kind of around the whole area. I went to Salt Lake City. I was in Reno, San Francisco, just outside of LA, down to Phoenix. I was all over the place. Saw the Grand Canyon. And I think this was somewhere between Las Vegas and Reno, which was one of the most favorite drives I've ever done. So, like, not a car in either direction for miles and miles and miles, as you can tell in this photo. And I really wanted to kind of get like a road trip feel or vibe. Now, when I originally shot this photo, I was actually down pretty much on the ground, but it didn't give me that feeling of distance because I didn't get to see a lot of the road. So when the angle changed, I saw mostly this, but when I stood up, I saw more of the road in the distance. So I had to stand up, even though that wasn't my original intention. And that's kind of the part about photography. You have an idea in your head, you do it, maybe it doesn't work on screen, or you look at your back of your camera and you think, okay, well, I need to fix this. Don't be afraid to take a different shot or to try something new. And I ended up on basically this shot. So this is a very symmetrical photo. You've got lines coming in from both thirds coming through into the center of the photograph. My horizon is in the middle, which is a bit of a no-no, but because there's symmetry here, I'm okay with that. The distance point is in the middle of the photo, and I kind of want it to be. I want your eye to be sucked directly into the middle here. So there is admittedly a lot to fix. I'm noticing some vignetting around the edges, and that has to do with aperture and the lens that you use. So I'm just going to scroll down here on the right, and I'm going to enable 2 settings, or maybe possibly 1. I don't see any chromatic aberration. I'm sure there's some in here, but it's not a big deal here. So maybe I'll explain that in a different photo. Actually, there is some up here. So if I zoom in, do you see this like little green tinge along this mountain? That's not actually there in real life, obviously. So chromatic aberration is it's the failure of the lens to focus all the color wavelengths into one point. It's because of dispersion, and it's kind of hard to explain. The lens elements varies by color wavelength. So you get these like color fringes along the edges, but you can easily remove them. So over here, there's actually a button that says remove chromatic aberration. So when I click this, I want you to watch the green that's up right along here. See how that just took it away? It's just correcting for your lens mistake. So really easy fix right away. And what also happens when you're taking such a wide angle like this, because this was shot at 17 millimeters, f6.3, 17 millimeters, 1/320th of a second. I probably had it in like P mode or something. I was pretty lazy. Anyway, sometimes you get some distortions from shooting such wide angles. So I'm actually going to click the Enable Profile Corrections. That's going to look at the type of lens that I used, because all this information is stored in a RAW file. It's going to look at the lens I used, and it's going to make adjustments based on that lens. So if I click that, you notice how it kind of it removes the vignette. It kind of changes the perspective a little bit, removes a little bit of fisheye kind of thing happening, but it's almost done a little bit too good of a job on the vignette. It's almost too white down here, so I can actually manually bring this back in. So I'm going to do that. Wow, my computer's being really slow. Okay, so I'm going to bring that back in a little bit. Okay, so now the actual real edit starts. So I'm noticing that I'm losing a lot of detail in the sky, so I'm going to want to bring my highlights down. And you'll notice right away, if you are a fan of the first 3 episodes I did, where I look at your guys' photos and I'm trying to, work with the highlights and work with the shadows and bring them up or bring them down. I can't really do that because that's a JPEG file. Since this is a RAW file, there's so much more information stored. The dynamic range is pretty crazy. So I'm able to kind of bring those down. So I'm actually going to bring down my exposure, but I'm going to compensate that by bringing up the shadows. And you don't want to get too HDR here, but you want to be happy for the most part. So I'm going to, thinking like right there, I'm going to add a bunch of contrast. That's really going to bring out the texture of the road. And if I zoom in, I need to zoom. There we go. That's better. I was at like 200 to 300% there. If I add just a little bit of clarity, it really just almost crystallizes the road a little bit to give it a little bit more texture. Also the mountains in the background. So I notice I'm a little bit dark on the ground in the mountains. So I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. Now the sky I need to deal with. So I'm going to use a gradient filter, a linear gradient filter to bring this down a little bit. And I kind of want it to be, I don't want to be right straight. I want to be a little bit of an angle, almost to match the angle of the mountains. You can kind of, if I hover over the black, you can kind of see where it's taking effect. So I can really make that sky pretty menacing, give it a real epic personality. Add some contrast, add some clarity. It's a little dark. We're going to bring it up. Now I can kind of see my vignette coming back in. So I'm actually going to go down and bring this vignette back to almost correction status. I'm okay with the color balance. It's not perfect. There's some purples and stuff happening in here, so I might just kind of bring back the magenta and the purple a little bit. And what I notice is that this road is yellow, which is fine. It probably has a little bit of a yellow tinge to it, but when I think of pavement, I don't think yellow. I think monochrome, black and white. So actually kind of want to remove that color from the road. That gets a little complicated, and there's definitely ways you can do it, but I'm going to show you the long, methodical kind of way to do it. So I've clicked on the adjustment brush, which is only going to change things that I paint, basically. There's an example. So if I undo that by pressing Control Z, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to bring my exposure back to 0. I'm going to remove the saturation and bring this way down. So if you see I paint this here, it's just going to change it to kind of black and white. I don't want to go all the way. I don't want to go too far down. I may want just a little bit of color in the pavement, but not this much. So I'm literally just going to paint, and I don't have to worry about painting over the white lines because the line is white. There is no color in there. So if I just paint, you can just slowly see it melt. Actually, I'm going to bring it all the way down so it's easier to paint. I can see what I'm doing. I'm not getting too close to those yellow lines because we're going to kind of pay attention to them a little bit later in better detail. So I can make my size of my brush bigger or smaller by just scrolling my mouse wheel. Okay, so here's where things get not complicated, but you have to be careful. So I'm just kind of painting right along that yellow line. And I'm going to do the whole road except for that yellow line. See, I made a mistake there. Control Z, undo that. It doesn't need to be perfect. Unless you're, like, if you're just posting this on Instagram, don't bother spending a crazy amount of time doing something like this. But if you're going to print this on a canvas, or if you're going to sell the photograph, obviously you want this to be 100% perfect. But just for this specific exercise here, I just want to give you an idea of the process of doing this. So now we're going to do the other side. And I'm hoping that once I'm done this, it'll show a really good example of what I mean with the road. Oh, made a mistake there. And you know, you might be watching this thinking, well, this is kind of cheating. This isn't photography, this is something else. If you think that this is not photography, then you are fooled by probably most of the professional photography that you see out there, because a lot, if not all, of the photographers do quite a bit of editing and fixing in their photos. That's just what it's become, and that's kind of industry standard in a way. So it's you know, it's tricky on the side with the other little notches, and you got a little break in the road here, so we're gonna fix that. And I'm not gonna do this part because I'm okay with a little bit of color back there. It gives a reflection of the sun too with the heat waves. So a little tricky here. I left another spot back up there that I'm going to fix, don't worry. Another reason why I'm doing this is so the yellow lines, oops, I made two mistakes there. So the yellow lines on the road actually stand out more, which is going to make it pop even more. So I can't zoom in anymore, so this is going to be tricky. And when I originally edited this photo a couple of years ago, I don't know if I did this or not. I don't remember my original edit. But that's the first thing, one of the first things I thought of for this one. Okay, so there's kind of basically what I am looking for. I need to fix this part over here. Okay, so if we zoom out, you see how the road, even though I've removed the color, I've removed a bit of life from the road. That was before. This is after. Before, after. So it's made the road look a little bit more like a road. Now, because I've done that, the actual photo looks a little bit too cool to me. So I might just come back in here and, oops, I think I'm still on the, yeah, sorry, I'm still on the adjustment brush. I want to click off that. And I just want to make maybe just a little bit more pop of warmth back in there. And what I could do is add my own vignette, just by I'm going to bring the midpoint way in like this to really center on the distance point. So now that I've set that, I can come back and bring this off and then start to go back in and see. Just a subtle little vignette. This really does a better job, I think, than a natural vignette, depending. Now we're getting a little dark in the photo, so I might brighten that up a little bit. There's some other things that I would probably do, maybe add some vibrance, but we've gone from this to this. So we've given a little bit of personality in the sky. The road is a lot more interesting. The mountains have a little bit more texture and contrast. So it's not perfect. There's still things to do, but for this exercise, we're going to leave it at that. Moving on to the next photo, this was taken in Arizona, in northern Arizona, I believe, and I think this was on Rim Road. I think Rim Road. And obviously it's at night, you see the stars there. This is a highway down here. If you're wondering what this big streak of light is, it's a long exposure, so it collects all of the light in a certain time frame of the photo. And the time frame here was 129 seconds. And this is at 21 millimeters, and it's f4, because that is the lowest that lens will go that I have. ISO 500. So I went straight in my horizon because I did not get it right in camera. It happens. That looks okay. So I love the stars. You get star trails like this when you take a picture basically for any longer than 30 seconds. Some people like it, some people don't. I don't mind it. I don't really care that there's streaks there. And you get those streaks not because the stars are moving, not because the sky is moving, but because the Earth is moving. You are moving. So it looks like the sky's moving, but it's not. It's actually you that's moving. It's the Earth that's rotating. So the stars aren't moving. You are. But it looks like the stars are moving in this photograph, which is fine. So let's add some shadows in here. We want to see that forest. We want to see the green. I'm going to bring down the highlights a little bit so we can see the sky. I'm going to add some vibrance. I want to add some contrast to kind of bring out the elements. And we're going to brighten it back up like this. Color balance is not working. It's way too yellow down in the forest area. So I just want to try one thing first. I don't want to remove all the yellow. I just want to remove just a bit of it and play with the color balance slider a little bit. Something like this. It's at night. It's supposed to be cool. It's not really supposed to be warm. So I noticed quite a bit of yellow and stuff in this rock, which is frustrating. I could remove it by selecting the orange, but I'm gonna leave it the way it is. The sky looks okay. We're gonna fix it a little bit here in a second, but I noticed some vignetting on the edges. So like the last photo, we're gonna kind of come in, remove or enable profile corrections. That's gonna straighten our horizon a little bit, remove the vignette, but we're gonna bring it back in just a little bit, something like that. I'm thinking, and add a little bit more contrast. We're going to add a gradient filter to the top, and it's still set from the last time I used it. I'm going to bring the exposure way down, and I want this to be a little bit more gradual, so I can make that maybe a little bit too much. Bring it down somewhere like there. We got too much. I'm going to add some contrast. I'm going to bring back the exposure so it looks a little bit more natural. There's going to be a bit of differentiation because of the lights from the sunset and the towns, the natural city lights and stuff over there. But I want to add some punch to the stars in the sky, so I want to bring in some clarity here. And that's going to do some stuff. I'm going to bring down my exposure. Something like that. Just kind of play around with it a little bit. Because we brought up so much detail, it's quite noisy here in the shadows. So we're going to come down here to noise reduction and bring this up just a little bit. So we're losing detail, but we're also removing noise at the same time. When you're viewing a photo from like this, when it's all zoomed out, you're not going to notice it. So sometimes I do use it. This big line here, if you're wondering what the hell that is, that's a plane. And so is that over there. So it's not too bad. There's some things I'd like to fix about it, or some more things I'd like to fix, maybe add some vibrance. But for the most part, I'm okay with it. I like that the trees over here on the left giving balance to the rock on the right. The road here goes through the third of the photo, which is, I think, the interest of the photo. And then the top third of the photo is the skies, the stars. Now, we do have a horizon in the middle, which is a bit of a no-no. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm okay with it here. Well, we could bring it down like this and make it a little bit more 16 by 9 or something, just so the horizon's not completely in the center. But overall, happy with this photo. So let's move on. So you can't see much here. It's pretty dark. It's that is the camera. The camera that you're watching on is the camera that I shot all these photographs on, and the LCD screen on the back, it's old. The camera's 8 years old, and the brightness doesn't work properly. So when I was here taking this photo, it actually looked way brighter on the back of the camera versus what you're seeing right now. So you might look at this and think, well, what the hell can we do with this photo? You can barely see anything. Here's the magic of the RAW file. If I just increase the exposure, look at all the information that we now see. It is really incredible. Now, if I bring up the shadows, look at all of this noise in here. That's not good. Here's an example of what you can do with noise reduction. So if I give half noise reduction, see how it removed most of that? And if I add some color in here, it's going to remove some more. And I can change the detail to be higher or lower. We're not going to use this much shadows, so we're only going to do less than half. And we're going to bring back this noise reduction to there, because it also makes the rest of the photo a little bit soft. I try not to use noise reduction, but I'm not afraid to use it if I need to. So we probably do have some chromatic aberration in here. Yeah, I see a little bit green and purple fringing, so we're just going to remove that by clicking the button. We're going to enable profile corrections, and my horizon's not straight, so it's close. Actually, it might be straight. I don't know. It's hard to tell because of the mountains. That's fine, whatever. So we're pretty bright here. We're gonna bring the brightness back. We're gonna bring the shadows actually back too, because I'm noticing quite a bit of noise down here, which is not good. Add some vibrance just to give it a little kick of color. It's a little warm, so I'm gonna cool it off with the color balance slider. Maybe bring the exposure up a little bit. I'm gonna use the gradient filter to bring some contrast into the sky. I'm gonna come right down on top of there, I think. Yeah, we're getting a lot of noise, color noise and stuff through here. But if you're just posting on Instagram, not a big deal. I'm going to leave that the way it is, but my subject here is not exactly in the middle of the frame, so we're going to bring it to, I think, be a little bit more like this. Bring this down here-ish, maybe. Something like that, maybe. It looks a little square. We might be able to get away with that. Anyways, the point of this one was to, if you're shooting RAW, which you should be, if you have an SLR, you should be, don't be afraid to be in a pretty dark lit spot, or there's information that you can get out of shadows. There's information that you can get out of highlights with a RAW file. So always shoot RAW if you can. Moving on to the next one. So this was actually shot in Prince Edward Island in 2018, I think it was, 2018. And that is the West Point Lighthouse in the western part of PEI. So it's right along the water. I was camping here this weekend, and yeah, let's just have some fun with this one. So I could bring up the shadows, I could bring up some detail in here, but I actually don't want to do that. I want that to be basically silhouetted. So I'm going to bring the shadows down. I don't want to see any detail over in the right, in the foreground, anything. So I'm going to bring the shadows all the way down. And I really want this to be a silhouetted photograph, because you see this guy up here, which was not planned. This is a random dude. He's also silhouetted. So got some color fringing, so I'm going to actually remove some chromatic aberration, some lens profile correction, add some vibrance to really punch that sky. Now this is a really cold photograph as it is, and I don't want that. So I'm going to fix my horizon, make sure it's straight. I'm going to bring this up a bit, maybe here. I find the trees on that side a little distracting. I want that lighthouse to be on the line of third, so I'll probably do something like this and bring it down so his basically face is right on the dot of that third. So I'm thinking probably something like this. And I don't know what's here, some kind of highlight, but I don't like that. So we're going to use the spot removal tool to kind of get rid of this whole section. And since it's all black, it doesn't really matter where it goes. And there's another little highlight here too, and another little small one there. So I really just want that to be completely black down there. Maybe add a little bit of clarity, and now we're going to warm up this photo. Something that's a little bit more natural to the scene. Add some more vibrance. Maybe add some purple. A really nice summer sunset. Still bringing some warmth back in there. Something like that, I think, maybe. I like those colors together. Those colors look good in my opinion. Maybe add a gradient filter in here, just in the sky. Let's add some more contrast to kind of balance the silhouetted part. Not too much. Now we've got a lot of noise in there, so we're going to remove that with the noise reduction tool. It's going to get rid of quite a bit of that. I'm going to bring the color noise reduction up. And so I'm thinking something like that. You get the foreground here with the out of focus plant bits. It's a little soft over here. It's not too bad. This is an Instagram photo. This isn't, I wouldn't hang this on a wall or anything. But just a kind of a nice little sunset photo. Sunset silhouette photo. You can add some more contrast if I really wanted to punch it up. But anyways, let's move on. So I took this photo actually when I was giving a nighttime photography, not class or course. I was teaching my friend Ellen how to take night photos. And this is one of the photos that we got some beautiful clouds, which was awesome. We got some stars. It was just after sunset. Got the beach here. This is in Prince Edward Island. This was last summer actually. And you'll notice one thing, that the horizon, not only is it not straight, it's not. Not only is it not straight, even if it was straight, it's distorted because of the lens. So we want to fix that. Come down to our enable profile corrections. We're going to remove some chromatic aberration. That's always difficult to say that. Add some contrast. We're going to fix it so the horizon is actually straight. So it'd be something like that. And I'm shooting quite high here. My horizon is way low on the framing here, which isn't that great, but I really wanted to show the extension of the clouds and the wispiness just kind of like really moving up there. So we're going to add a punch of color in here. We're going to add some contrast. Maybe a little bit of shadows to kind of bring out these flowers or whatever they are. I noticed there's a dead pixel thing here going on, so I'm going to fix that with the spot removal tool. We've got some color noise, so we're going to bring up our noise reduction a little bit. Again, this is just an Instagram photo. It's nothing special. And I mean, I love those colors. It's such a punch of blue. We're going to bring up our exposure, I think, and change the color balance a little bit. And then we're going to use a gradient filter. Again, I love these gradient filters to add some contrast, maybe some clarity to the sky and really try and make it pop even more. So we're going to bring this down here. Add quite a bit of contrast. Maybe not too much clarity, but something like that. I really wanted that sky to pop. I wanted those clouds to kind of be the definition of this photo. So I'm thinking maybe somewhere like that. And we got quite a bit of noise here, so I might come back on some of these sliders and fix it. And there's another dead pixel up here. There's other little things that I would do I'd probably take another 20 minutes and really fine tune this photo. But generally, this is kind of the idea that I had going to my head when I shot this. I really wanted to show the clouds and the movement. So this was a long exposure. It was 30 seconds, 17 millimeters f4, ISO 1600. Last photo here. It is Cape Breton, and this is called White Point or something. I can't remember. So same thing. We're going to go in, enable profile corrections. It's going to help us with our horizon, and we're going to want to punch the brightness up here a little bit and the shadows. Maybe bring down the highlights, bring the shadows up. I don't want to get too HDR. Add some contrast in. I need to fix that horizon that is not straight. Something like that. It's still not exactly straight, but that's okay. This is really cool photo, cold photo, so we want to warm that up, maybe add some purples in there. This is a sunset photo, so we really wanted that sky to kind of be a little bit more realistic. Add some contrast, maybe a little bit more light in the foreground, definitely more vibrance. And I really think maybe we should kind of back off that purple. Add some more color in there. And we've got some issue here with the color in the ground. It's kind of muddy. So when I come back on the shadows, we're going to add a little bit of noise reduction, not a lot. So quite a bit of purple in these rocks and stuff, which is not real. So we're going to see if we can remove that without hurting the sky too much, but it's not looking like we can do that. So I'll bring it down a little bit. But I really want that sky. The sky's not doing it for me, so I want to see what we can do there. I try to bring up the exposure generally. Something like this. And we get almost too much contrast in the foreground here. So I might want to bring my blacks up just a little bit. There's definitely some chromatic aberration happening, so we want to remove that. So I'm okay with the ground. Obviously it's a little purple, but it's a sunset, so the sky should be warm. But the rest, anything that's not in the sun, direct sunlight, should almost look a little cool tinge to it. So I'm okay with the ground. It's not perfect, but we need to fix this sky. So same thing. We're going to use a gradient filter, add some contrast, add some clarity, bring down the exposure. Something like that-ish. And probably going to add a bunch of contrast, not so much exposure being lowered. Maybe some clarity. Bring the highlights down. Maybe something like that. And I could specifically play with the color of the sunset by using this. I kind of like the purple and that really like punch of purple and punch of yellow. I kind of like that, even though it's not super realistic. So I might come back on the yellow a little bit. Make it a little bit brighter. I noticed some lens dust up here that I need to fix. There's some other things that I could do. It's still a little dark, a little bit too much contrast, so I might come back on the contrast and maybe make it a little bit brighter. But again, most of the stuff that I edit, most of the stuff I do is for Instagram, so I don't really care too much about too much noise or anything like that. If the odd photo, if I intend to print, if I'm in the situation where I know I have a really good opportunity to print something, I'll take my time and kind of do things properly. But a lot of time when you're out shooting, you don't have a lot of time, and you're trying to get as much done as you can in a certain location while the sun is where it is and stuff. So photography is all about patience, and if you go into it knowing what you're going to do, and for me it's mostly Instagram photos. Personal shout out, follow me on Instagram, NEILTAYLORR. That's what I like to do. I don't really make a lot of money for my photos. I just do it for fun, and I just post it on Instagram. So that's really my intention with a lot of my photos. So like the others, I'll come back in here and do stuff like this, remove the lens dust and dirt and stuff, and play with the colors, make sure they're 100%. But this is kind of the general idea I have for this photo. So if you go back through and do a before and after of every photo, I already did on the first one, but before, after. Second one. Before, after, before, after, before, after. Third one, this one's going to be dramatic. Before, after. Completely unusable before, now we got something to work with in the after. The lighthouse, before, which wasn't a too bad photograph to begin with, after. Now that I look at that again, that's quite a bit of contrast. I'll probably back that up quite a bit, but and then the awesome clouds at night. Added a little bit more personality to that one. And then the last photograph, pretty dramatic change in that last one. You basically can't see any of the foreground in this last one. The sky is blown out, the foreground is underlit, and because of the power of RAW, we brought back the foreground. We put some life into the sky. We are definitely approaching HDR. So I might bring the shadows way down the foreground. And that's kind of what it's all about. It's about playing around. And when I do my edits, I usually, if I'm out shooting in a day and I take 250 photographs, I import them. I go through them one at a time. I do an initial edit on my favorites. And then I kind of go back through and I do the fine details. And once you go through them all and you kind of go back, you see new things. You see, okay, well, maybe I put too much contrast there. Maybe I put too much fill light, or, the color balance is off. I need to fix that. That's kind of what the process is. I would say when you're editing your photos, don't edit it, export it, and be done with it. Like, edit it, edit some other photos, maybe take a break, come back, look at it again, fix what you want to fix, and then export it. It's always good to look at your photographs a second time while you're editing. So I did 6 of my photographs here. I will continue. I have over 600,000, 700,000 photographs in my library. So there's lots. This series could literally never end. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned a couple things here. I know it was really specific to Lightroom, and I know I went pretty fast on purpose. I don't want this to be I don't want to take an hour and a half to edit 6 photographs. So I almost went at the pace where I actually do edit my photographs. It is quicker than that, but I wanted to kind of, just give you some tips and tricks. I hope that help. And if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comment section. I would love it if you could subscribe as well, because I'm going to be doing these videos pretty frequently coming up. So thanks, guys. Hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you in the next video. Adios.